everyone. Welcome to Living La Vita Local podcast, a friendly neighbourhood gaming podcast for some of your friendly neighbourhood gaming needs.
Oh, I see what you've done there.
My name is Faz.
Yeah, I'm Rich.
What would be a friendly neighbourhood gaming need?
I don't really know. I was trying to work it out while you were talking, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to be classy, and I'm not going to draw attention to that.
Yeah, fair enough.
But we're here now.
We're rarely classy.
I have no idea.
Lending a controller to your next door neighbour.
Yeah, maybe.
It's something like that.
I mean,
probably.
they'd have to ask really nicely.
Yeah.
And there's one that I probably wouldn't even lend it to then.
Yeah, that's you, guy.
You know the one.
He's our best listener. I on the way over, I was thinking about how long would it take Spider-Man to get from my house to your house?
Oh, yeah.
Because it's literally like a 7-minute walk and a 1 minute drive, maybe to round the corner. There aren't any tall buildings around here.
Not really.
So, do you think Spidey would make it round? Would he be better just driving, or
might just run?
Yeah, just run really quickly.
Jog round.
Does he run quickly, Spider-Man, or does he just swing quickly?
I mean,
I know he's got super strength or whatever. He's got everything kind of going on.
Spoiler alert! But when I was playing Spider-Man 2, he was running quite a lot.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. That's fine. You've been playing Spider-Man 2.
I've been playing Spider-Man 2.
One of them. Well, it's difficult to say because that's right. Let's stop here. Spider-Man. So,
yes.
I would say possibly the most popular pop culture, certainly the most popular superhero, I would say, ever, probably, in terms of not necessarily every single person's one, but if you Google it, like I did 3 days ago, it will tell you that he is the most popular superhero in the world.
All right.
Just above Batman and Superman. Now, Superman's not popular, but everyone knows Superman, don't they? But no one likes to hang out with Superman, I wouldn't think, necessarily.
I mean, I guess it depends what you mean by popular.
Yeah.
Because if everyone knows him,
Superman,
then, that probably counts, right?
But do you want to know Superman? Whereas you probably want to hang out with Batman. But why do you think... here's a wide open question, but why do you think that Spidey is so popular as a concept?
As a concept? It's more of the everyman, isn't he?
Yeah.
Traditionally.
Yeah.
I mean, personally, I don't give a toss. But, he winds me up a treat sometimes.
Yeah, I think so too.
I find certain iterations of him really annoying because they just go for everyone still likes the witty, sarky bants. Yeah. And it's yeah, that was 2006 though, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So come on.
Well, that's the thing. I feel like I'm the same as you. We consume a lot of Spider-Man in our house. I would say
that's a really sinister sentence. Wow, I don't know what to do with that.
Lots of white goo pie. No,
again, lot to unpack there, isn't it?
But even as of this weekend, we were at the local library and we picked up some graphic novels, and my 4-year-old was immediately drawn to Spider-Ham Adventures, right. And we've been reading that this week. So you've been playing Spider-Man 2 on the PS2, and formerly you've played on the GameCube as well. Mm-hmm. I have been playing the Marvel's Spider-Man Remastered, so the 2018 PS4 game, right? But the PS5 remaster from 2020. And I have let my 8-year-old have a dabble. Now it's, I think, whatever Peggy is, or whatever the age limit is. Yeah. I think it comes up as 16, and I was a bit and I've played through it, and I was a bit is there loads and loads of stuff that really offend me in that I can sort of maybe let them swing around as Spider-Man and beat some crooks up maybe a bit and do some of the Dr. Octavius puzzles that kind of pop up and things like that. I'm asking you, you've definitely played the game. No, that's what I was just I saw the blank look. I saw the blank look on your face.
I don't care.
And I was oh wait, shit, yeah. I'm just talking to you you've played it. But anyway, and I was and then we watched. We've just watched some of the Avengers movies recently, and then we watched the most recent Spider-Man movie, and then the trailer, the Spider-Man movie that's coming out this year. It's just, there's so much Spider-Man. There's so much of it. And I feel like there's just too much Spider-Man. So much rebooting and booting and hoofing and swinging and webbing and more booting and rebooting. It just there's a lot. There's a lot of him going on. So we thought we'd do a podcast about it. Clearly.
I mean, like Into the what was it Into the Spider-Verse and all that kind of stuff, and like the Spider-Man Noir stuff. Like I almost like the kind of I almost prefer the spin-off Spider-Man stuff to the main Spider-Man stuff.
The killing of Sonic the Hedgehog of Spider-Man stuff.
Basically, yes. You know, the stuff that it just strikes me as a little bit more imaginative, I dare say. Like
it probably is at this point, really, isn't it? I mean, he's kind of, what is he like? It's 80 years old as a, as a medium,
swinging around. As an 8-year-old.
So I'm the same as you. That is Into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse and things were just like they were a breath of fresh air. Really.
Yeah, that was the sweet spot.
So it'll be interesting to see how these two games feel. Them, I guess 15 years ish apart from each other. The only tie that I could think of, well, not only, but certainly with Spider-Man, but that isn't the best tie that I could think of, is that yours is the movie tie-in and has Dr. Octavius as kind of the main bad guy, I guess, really, is he? I mean, and you get a bit of a villains gallery in that one, I think, from what I remember. There's quite a few, you bump into quite a few different...
Yeah, they crowbarred quite a few in, I think. Yeah. Funnily enough, they had a making-of article about it in the latest Retro Gamer magazine.
Right, okay. Oh, right,
and I think there's a passing mention in there of how they basically took the plot of the film and then crowbarred in a load of villains and sort of padded it out a little bit.
I remember it being completely different.
So I think I said about half the runtime of the game is based on the film.
Yeah, and then so because this game is still quite recent, and I'd say that a lot of people are kind of picking it up maybe for the first time. Certainly, as I have in terms of the Marvel Spider-Man one. I'll try not to get into too much spoilery territory, but I don't think it's a massive spoiler to say that there are many of the same villains that you would expect of a Spider-Man sort of thing. And Doc Ock is, pops up effectively as that sort of guys, really. So
Pop Doc Ock.
Yeah, that one. Yeah.
Say that 4 times fast.
I will not do that on the podcast. Let's get into it then, and I think let's go for certainly the earliest game. It makes sense to go chronologically and see how it's developed, because I feel like probably even since the PS1 games necessarily, like, is in how much different can Spider-Man be as a concept. And you've had, this PS1 games before the Marvel flip to go to Insomniac and Sony back in the decision was made in 2014. Everything was pretty much, I think it was all Activision published, but by different developers.
Yeah.
So I've not played a lot of, and there's loads of PS3 games, and they're all really expensive to buy on the internet. They're all like sort of rare, limited editions, like Shattered Memories. And there's still a lot of Spider-Man games, and I'd say I've not played that many really. I've dabbled the PS1, dabbled with a couple of the PS2 games, and then never really picked one up again till now. So I don't know if there's a through thread or through web or whatever. So go for it. Remind me all about Spider-Man 2.
So this is as you said, ties in with the movie. My God, Tobey Maguire sounds bored in this.
So they are voiced by the actor, which is
or at least his name pops up in the manual. At least.
He's quite a boring kind of chap anyway. I mean, he's never really been in anything else. Seabiscuit, have you seen Seabiscuit, the horse racing one?
Because I don't want to be bored.
It's like a 3-hour epic about horse racing with Tobey Maguire in it.
I'm good, thanks. I'm good. No, I'm sure he does good work, but it's just never been a draw for me.
Yeah.
Let's just say that. But Bruce Campbell pops up as the sort of tutorial voice and is suitably snarky. So bonus points there. This was basically what I played on the GameCube because I didn't have GTA 3.
Okay.
I was like, open world stuff. Cool.
Yeah.
And I was trying to think, otherwise, how I ended up with it.
Yeah.
And I kind of don't remember the moment where I was like, yes, this one.
I need Spidey.
Yeah, I don't think that it was necessarily like I really want to play that Spider-Man game thing, or I don't know if maybe I just rented it and enjoyed it and picked it up, or if it was a present or what. I genuinely can't remember. But again, that article in Retro Gamer that I mentioned, you read that and they highlight, rightfully so, I think, the impact the kind of open world and the way you move around it had on the genre, if you like. Because prior to that, you'd swing around, but there was no like physics behind any of it.
Yeah.
So like your webs would just sort of shoot into the sky, and you would just be moving around.
Yeah.
Whereas in this, you're actually attaching to like buildings, lampposts, trees, things like that, and the swinging matters, the directions, the way you can change direction in midair and all that kind of stuff. And it's well done. It takes a little bit of getting used to. There were plenty of times where I would just smash into the side of a building and come to a dead stop, which, considering you can sprint along vertical surfaces and wall climb, there's a literal wall climb button. The fact that I was splatting into the sides of buildings is kind of embarrassing. Like I should have been able to suss that quicker than I did.
It's good to remember that those features exist though on a PS2 game, because like you said, certainly you wouldn't have thought that. Like you say, because you're kind of in that nexus of the open world sort of genre kind of thing, and it's like to be able to build those in at that time is impressive.
Yeah,
2002 was this? I think
there or thereabouts.
Yeah, something like that, wasn't it?
And you go one step further and like you climb to the top of the I don't know, the Empire State Building or whatever, and the city's all there. And it's not like it's doing the Grand Theft Auto thing of dividing it up into little sections that you have to move between or anything like that. You can just wander around it. It's just there. And like, there's plenty of short draw distances, or the crowds arguably could be more crowded, but like the whole place feels busy enough, especially for a PS2 game. It is genuinely impressive how it all hangs together. However,
it's a web of lies.
It's not so much a web of lies, but it's one of those things that, like, going back to it, you do see it in a different light. In fact, one thing that I forgot to mention straight off the bat, where you said it was Activision, it was Treyarch.
Yes.
Of Call of Duty fame, went and done this.
Yeah.
And I saw their logo pop up and was like, apart from Call of Duty, I would genuinely have struggled to tell you anything else they ever made, but here we are. And yeah, I've written Treyarch, and no one gets shot. They do. So
but there's no blood, right?
There's no blood. There's no blood. So yeah, you are Spider-Man. You do a lot of swinging around. There's a lot of moves that you can unlock, up to and including tricks and ways that you can change your direction in midair and stuff like that, as well as like combat combos. The combat is a little bit. It kind of reminded me of a almost like it could be a prototype for what you end up with in Arkham Asylum.
Yeah,
and the Batman games with the kind of punchy combos and then occasionally dodging when a prompt pops up and then all that kind of stuff. It's not anywhere near as free flowing as the Arkham games, which, as far as I'm concerned, is still one of, if not the greats.
It's all anyone ever refers to, I would think, as like when I know we certainly do quite often. Certainly since I've played it as well, and I'd say that whenever I read an article about combat in any game, it's like Arkham Asylum is like the one that everybody ever just says is like, it either is or isn't like this.
Yeah, and this feels like, I can imagine that Rocksteady, when they were starting to think about making Arkham Asylum, I can imagine this was the game they played as like, okay, this is what we have to beat.
Yeah,
this is what we're going to try and top. And yeah, like it all hangs together well. There's a slow motion toggle button because it was the noughties, and there's some good stuff here. I think where it kind of falls down a little bit for me is the kind of repetitive nature of how the game brings it all together in a structure.
Yeah.
So for your chapters, and there's no like loading screens between chapters or anything like that.
Really? Okay.
When you start a new chapter, you get a cool little like the game pauses, and like if you're doing something cool like mid jump or whatever, it will swoop round to the front of Spider-Man, so it almost looks like a kind of comic book cover type thing. And all that kind of stuff. It's now that I've seen it again, it's the kind of little touch that I'm kind of surprised I don't see more often nowadays. It feels like something you'd be able to do relatively easily. Whatever. Once you're in a chapter, you'll get like a to-do list straight off the bat, which I'm not sure how I feel about that.
Do 900.
But it is arguably better than just having icons spewed across a minimap.
This is going to be this conversation is going to be hilarious because it's just.
I imagine it's not far off. But like, you do still get icons, but it'll be for like little incidental crimes while you're wandering around New York. So there might be a shootout somewhere, or there might be a kid loses a balloon, or you have to stop someone from falling off a ledge or something like that. Fun fact, you can fail those missions. But when you're doing all of these things, you get hero points, right? And hero points is your kind of currency for getting these upgrades, but they're also part of these to-do lists for a chapter. So one of them relatively early on might say something like, go to a certain place to do an assignment, and that'll be your kind of story mission.
Yeah.
You'll get hero points for doing that and beating people up on the way. It might also say unlock a specific upgrade, which you will lose hero points for. And you'll also need to get a minimum number of hero points as like the third item. So the whole game is geared towards doing hero shit to get hero points. And then story just kind of happens almost as a byproduct of this. At the time, that was fine. Going back to it now, it does feel grindy from the off. And that was where I was kind of getting a little bit hung up on it. So like the selection of crimes and things like that you can sort. It's not solve. You're not solving anything. Just deal with.
And I laughed a lot louder than I was thinking.
In the world, they start recycling pretty quickly. Right. And that's not great. When you're having to like do 10 of them to get your points up. It's not great.
Yeah.
And granted, like they ease you into it. And there will be some chapters where you don't have to do that. It's just that you are having to do that from quite an early stage.
So can you not really propel the story forward without those? No, right, at all. Then.
So like if you have 3 things on your chapter to-do list, you have to do them. Otherwise you are not leaving that chapter.
Right, okay.
Right? It's not like Grand Theft Auto where you finish a story mission, you go to a different icon on your map for the next story mission. No, it's not like that.
Right.
You are stuck where you are until you've got the hero points. The hero points will come fast, like you build them up quickly. And it's not like you go and buy an upgrade and then you're having to find an extra 1,000 points because you've just got rid of them. It's not quite like that. They do like stick with you, as it were. But I did not play this game for massively long as a refresher. I finished it when I was on the GameCube back in the day. I just went back in for a few hours this time to just check that I wasn't going to chat a load of rubbish. And even in that time, I've lost count of the number of samey shootouts I sorted out. The people that
getting sorted out, just like there, just like, dropping down. Like, grab them, guys. Come on, what the fuck are we doing? What we fighting about?
But this is the thing: you grab people off a ledge and you put them on the floor, and that's your thing. That's it. You're done.
Or and they just walk off about their day.
Walk off. Or like you have to get someone to a hospital. But like the way it mixes things up is you have like slightly randomized dialogue at the start of these things, and that's kind of it. Mechanically, nothing is changing. Even in the kind of movement of the cutscenes, nothing is changing. And all that kind of stuff. Maybe the odd costume here and there or something. But like, I lost count on the number of times I would hear some snot-nosed brat go, "I've lost my balloon," and I'm just like, I don't care.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Deal with it.
Yeah, no, yeah. Sorry,
Go deal with it. It's fine.
If you don't let them lose the balloons early in life, they'll never learn. Like the
Well,
the balloon
should have had a tighter grip, shouldn't you?
Chubby fucking hands.
So yeah, like it. The randomized dialogue does add an element of charm. So like I have written down one of my favorites, where Spider-Man would turn up to an NPC, have a little quip, and then they would say what's going on, and then you be on your merry way. So you do end up with conversations like Tobey Maguire turning up saying, "Give it to me straight. Give it to me straight. Do I look fat in these tights?" And then the NPC saying, "An armored car is being robbed." And you're just like, okay, good. So yeah, that was a bit odd. The pacing of the narrative itself, because of all of this like meandering, it does feel like quite a sedate pace.
Yeah.
So like I've written here, chapter 7, still waiting for some stakes to kick in for the story, and like they do come. Like the plot of the movie does turn up, and all that kind of stuff. But like, yeah, it just takes time to kick in, and at the same time, you are probably just buggering about going around town anyway. Like you can get hero points for just tapping the tutorial icons.
Yeah.
That are just scattered everywhere. Not many, but you get them.
It's something, yeah.
Or like there are like challenge race type things, and sometimes it will be like a timed point to point thing, or it'll be timed, but you have to hit different like movement stunts and stuff like that at different checkpoints.
Yeah.
So you're touching the ground briefly here, but you're doing a particular type of swing or flip there, and that's what the movement upgrades are helping you do, and things like that. So like, they've tried to weave all of these mechanics together, but it simultaneously feels like it gives you everything that the game has to offer at the same time, while at the same time feeling like it's gatekeeping most of what the game has to offer.
Yeah.
Because there's not, like, once you've started getting the upgrades, you're just like, okay, well, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
I'm just doing this cycle over and over again.
It feels like they've just given Neversoft a ring and been like, guys, we're just going to do this thing where it's like a Tony Hawk's Run. Like, it's in,
it could have been.
With a list.
It almost could have been. And I know it sounds like I'm really down on it. Like, I'm not. It is a good game. But at the same time, it really didn't take me long to start feeling like I've seen this before. And I don't mean that because like I've played it previously. I mean like within that session, I was like, well, I've done this. It's just that like now I've got a slightly different move to punch you with, and I don't think that in itself is enough to drag me through it. Yeah, it's just a bit
Wet
like
Willy.
It would have. I don't know if it would have been better for giving you like a kind of more Grand Theft Auto type progression of the story.
Yeah.
And like all of the side stuff was side stuff. Because like it does feel like they've structured it so that you can, where they're forcing you to get like, say, speed upgrades for your swinging and stuff like that, that feels like they're trying to prep you for, this mission's going to have a tight time limit, or you're going to have to keep up with Black Cat as she's hurtling around or whatever. And all this kind of stuff. So like I do kind of get where they're coming from.
Yeah.
I get the logic, but I can't help but think that if you were making the same game nowadays, you would tweak that.
Yeah.
I think that the structure and the format's the wrong word, but like just the way all of the gameplay mechanics sit together feels like that would be the prime thing to revisit.
I wonder if it's like, is there something to do, not necessarily licensing or anything, but I'm just wondering with it being that you kind of get like the second half of the game that is driven by the movie, it's almost like, is someone worried about just having a whole game that is completely reflective of the movie and a story driven, if you will, that is in, and just kind of going, like you said, about doing the Grand Theft Auto thing and being more, right, okay, go do this task next, do this next, or was there an engine built onto an engine, or was it just, it doesn't sound like it gels quite correctly, it feels like you've got two different types of...
I don't think it's necessarily, it's not like you suddenly get to the second half of the game and there is the entirety of the plot. Like there are elements of it before, it's just that you know, it'll be spread out and it'll be spread thin. So I don't know if that's a symptom of maybe getting the script quite late or something like that.
Yeah.
But like, I understand the logic behind trying to pad the movie out. I'm just not sure if the knowledge of what they're doing sits comfortably with me, because once you see it like that, you're like, oh, actually, there is a lot of padding here. And you know, if you are trying to play it for the story, A, good luck. B, yeah, you are kind of missing the point of the game. The big draw is just that mechanical
being Spider-Man,
being in the world, doing Spider-Man stuff. To the extent, personally, going back and playing it again, I would almost have preferred they had just completely divorced it from the movie.
Yeah.
And just almost added in like a bunch more crimes for you to deal with out in the world. Like, just make it completely open world and like, you know,
just Spider-Man's general week.
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
no big villains necessarily.
Exactly.
Just sort of
just have a bigger variety of things to do. Like, I think there's something really compelling there, because the mechanics are so good. But then the combat is not so great, and like you end up in this weird trade-off again. And I think ultimately where I come down on it is like, I get why so many people hold it up as one of the great superhero games of all time. Personally, I think the Arkham games have surpassed it. I haven't played any of the more recent Spider-Mens. But like, this is an important stepping stone, and it does show what is possible, but it does kind of, and I do not mean this in a derogatory way, it feels almost like a proof of concept. It feels like a glimpse into the future. It feels like a stepping stone. It does not, to me, feel like I nearly said complete product. That's wrong. Like, it is, but like, there's a lot of jagged edges there. You know, it's of its time. I think is putting it mildly. And it's not even necessarily a game that I can imagine that like would be great if you decided to like suddenly remaster it or something like that. There's just it feels, and I mean this in a nice way, I swear I do. I swear I do. But like, it feels like a relic in a nice way. It feels like I was playing an important piece of video gaming history, but
I get that.
It needs to sort of stay in the past. Like, I don't think there's any point in trying to bring it forward, because everything that it did has been done since, but better. In various different ways, shapes, and forms. But at the same time, this was the point where so much of that came together. And it's a genuinely good movie licensed video game from that era, which was a real rarity. So like, it does so much right, but like, going back to it now is kind of difficult.
I mean, you're talking, what, 24 years, and it's like, and everything you're saying, I'm sure the people that are listening that have played the newer Spider-Man, or probably any game since then as well, and this is why I was trying to drive the point at the start of the podcast, is almost that how many Spider-Man games would be different from the core mechanic on the main draw being you are Spider-Man webbing your way through the streets, solving some crimes. I mean, I don't know of any that there is.
But the character itself is so intrinsically tied to having an interesting way to get around town.
But this is why, you know, would a Spider-Man noir game be so terrible, or, you know, like that kind of thing where if you did do a killing of Sonic the Hedgehog-esque twist on things, that is would it be that bad? I mean, I know. Well, sorry.
To hijack your point. Like, you
please do
take the example of a Spider-Man noir
chase you
game,
down
right?
with webs.
Like a hypothetical Spider-Man noir game where you are doing the moving around town, swinging, and all that kind of stuff, but it's black and white, cool, moody, jazzy soundtrack. And rather than having a focus on combat, you know, a little bit of combat in there maybe, but having a focus on like investigating.
I was going to say
stuff.
LA Noir.
Yeah, like interrogating people, finding clues.
Which is made a game quick.
Like, I'd be down for that, but like, that's the secret sauce that I think you just need an extra something in there that it's almost like you need three things, right? You need the locomotion, you need the combat, and then a question mark. And I know some of them might have like stealth mechanics, or in our hypothetical Spider-Man noir game, you'd have investigations, or like it just feels like there is a third leg to this that Spider-Man 2 is possibly missing, and I couldn't tell you what it would be or what would just slot in there, but like it just. And this is talking with a hell of a lot of hindsight, obviously it is. But yeah, I was playing it, was like, this is really good. I'm nearly having fun. Something's missing for me. Like there is just there is a something missing here. So yeah, it's an interesting one. And I was thinking about scores, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to start talking, and I will come up with a number.
See what happens.
And I'm still not entirely sure.
No.
What? Like I'm thinking 7. It feels like a cop-out. Like, I think 7 is doing it an injustice, but I don't think on its own merits in 2026, is it good enough for an 8? I'm not sure. So I'm going to say 7, but like, it's more like a 7?
Yeah, but that's a good score though. That is in.
Of course it is.
I kind of, when you started speaking about it there, I expected you to maybe drop it a little bit lower, but then I always do. The pessimist that I am, but but I think you always respect really well where things come from, and that's important. I think sometimes whenever I score a game, I'm like, no, it's shit now. Like, I don't care where it was 24 years ago, but I think you made a really good point about it being an important artifact, if you will. It's in gaming history.
But like, that's the thing. Like, so many times we've gone back to these games that are important and gone, yeah, but playing them now is a right chore. Like, playing this is not a chore,
which is important to know.
Which is really important, and that's the bit that's making me kind of think maybe actually it could be an 8. Even though it's however many years old. But like at the same time, it feels hampered or held back. Held back's probably the more accurate version somehow. And like whether or not that's just by the grunt that the PS2 didn't have, or the design ethics of design philosophy of the time, or I don't know what, but like, yeah, it's important. It feels important. It's still fun to play and get into. Would I go out of my way to play it on a random day? Like, am I going to sit there and have a sudden hankering to play it? Probably not.
Yeah.
It still is a little bit clunky sometimes. There's a couple of like obstacle course type challenge things that are not fun. One of them is like a story one that they've crowbarred in. That is just a wind up.
There is nothing worse than when one of the mechanics doesn't work, and it's like, oh, we've got this specific type of mission you have to do, and it's like, oh, that is so hard and annoying, and you made it a main story.
But like, equally, I'm sitting here saying, oh, an other mechanic feels like it's missing, but you put a stealth mechanic or something in this, and you'd just be like, well, yeah, it probably feels a bit surplus to requirements. So like, I get the counter argument. But in this game, you can chase a car down, attach yourself to it, and just wail on the windscreen.
Ooh.
That's fun. That feels like Spider-Man shit. But then you fast forward to, Pursuit Force and, Sleeping Dogs and stuff like that. And they're using similar mechanics. And
I should talk about that the other day. Someone just like literally put on Pursuit Force, and I was like, it's really funny that you kind of think that the evolution to Sleeping Dogs, and it's almost like no one's ever played. Like if you'd played Pursuit Force and never played Sleeping Dogs, or vice versa, and you go, oh, look at this really unique mechanic, but actually, there are games out there that use the same thing, and Spider-Man being one of them as well.
Like. And going back and going like, oh shit, this is here, and like that was really pleasant surprise, and things like that where, it feels like an important game still.
Yeah. Oh, good. Going back to that popularity point as well, then. Just thinking about, and there are everything that you said, it's really interesting because if I didn't do a review and I just sort of said, oh, Marvel Spider-Man, everything Rich just said, that is in how much more, or how much different, or how much that third spice factor, third leg, whatever we'll call it, is there to make it that much different from a game 15 years previous. There's not. There's a lot in this game, in a positive way as well. But in terms of a core mechanics, that is in. It certainly feels like the whole idea was just being Spider-Man and being free to roam around New York City, and it to look fucking amazing while you're doing that. I'm losing my voice. I'm going to Spider-Man Noir.
Getting all emotional.
It's so weird. I haven't even started talking yet. So yeah, I mean, to think about that popularity point, like, is in to not have something to draw you to these Spider-Man games. It's really interesting to see that. And we spoke about this previously. We were doing like a couple of episodes. We were doing the draft for the top selling games, and for the PlayStation 4, Spider-Man, the original one of this, it's a trilogy now. It was the second best selling PS4 game, and that's behind Grand Theft Auto 5, and just ahead of God of War. So popular in its own right. And then to look what Spider-Man 2 has done on the PS5, and it is vastly far and away above any other game for sales. Like, it is seen as the game. People still talk about it nowadays and sort of say, "Oh, has the PS5 got a game that's a killer app?" Well, actually, it does. It's Spider-Man 2 from terms of sales, but I guess people don't necessarily see it that way critically. Maybe I think a lot of people talk about this one being probably the better of the bunch out of this, and maybe Miles Morales, which is more your Uncharted 4 to your Lost Legacy kind of sort of thing. Really, you get a 7 or 8 hour game out of Miles Morales. So yeah, it's like, so I don't think there's necessarily something here that has that extra spice factor compared to what you're saying. I think the core mechanics and the story are just done really, really, really well, and it's almost like this game for me is the most I've ever felt like I am being a superhero fantasy being lived out in any video game I've ever played.
Right.
Even as much as saying Arkham Asylum, for example. Arkham Asylum, while the combat is incredible and the story is good and the I guess the overall feeling and vibe of the game is good, do I genuinely think that I am Batman? Like, I know it sounds stupid. It's like sort of like
it doesn't sound stupid, but the reason I'm grinning is that for me, I felt more like Batman in Arkham City. Mainly because there were more opportunities to swoop down on people from out of nowhere and stuff like that.
So probably because I haven't played Arkham City, I know that's your preference out of those games. Whereas in this one, like at every point that I was either being Peter Parker, who is extremely affable in this, really well acted, and there is a lot for Peter to do rather than just Spider-Man as well. There's a lot of Peter Parker in this, and a good chunk of it, and interesting stuff. But when you are, I guess, that character, and then also being Spider-Man as well, whether you are, I guess, swinging around the city or as you sorting things out, as you put before, that is in. Yeah, it feels as much as I think you could ever make something feel like you were sorting things out as a superhero, which is a real positive for it. Just to peel back to, so I'm gonna stop here and just kind of talk about why I kind of like chose this point to sell my Logitech D Cloud and trade it for a PS Portal.
Oh, right.
Very much to play on this game. So I was playing on my Logitech G Cloud and enjoying it, and it's great, and it kind of it goes across Xbox and you can play PlayStation on it and emulators and things, and yeah, brilliant. And I found it really, really useful and streamed really, really well. But this game very specifically makes you use the big button in the middle of the PlayStation 5 controller to go onto the map and also to all your skill trees and everything. And the one thing the Logitech just wouldn't do, because it wasn't officially supported for PlayStation, even though it has an app, is you had to like double press in, like you had to just pick something, you would make a double button to do that. And I found there was barely any buttons that in this game that I could find a combination that I wasn't using to get onto that map. And I so desperately wanted to play this game, A, for the podcast, B, because I wanted to play it, and C, I was also a bit like, we've got a PlayStation 5 now, the Portal looks great, I'm making this weird transition where I'm swinging back to sort of, still playing Nintendo and Switch, still playing Xbox, but I've got the Xbox on the smaller screen now, so I can kind of play that as and when on a TV and not annoy Sally. Like, as in, I don't really need the G Cloud as much. And I've always had the Razer Kishi that I sort of reviewed ages and ages ago, the thing that you open up that's just like a backbone. And I always found worked really well for my phone. And I've been playing on that again recently.
Right.
And that made me remind me, I was like, the G Cloud was great, but actually I've got a Razer Kishi that does just as good a job. And actually the streaming to my phone with my internet seems fine, and it seems to work, and the buttons work absolutely fine. So I was like, so if I can do that, and I can trade it in pretty much like for like price wise for a Portal, I will do that. So this isn't a review of the PS Portal, but certainly, it's definitely. I'm glad I wasn't an early adopter and saw lots of people being very upset about it being really chuggy and not streaming very well at all, and not being able to. I don't think you could you not stream straight off PS Plus maybe immediately? I think it was, and maybe it was just remote play, and now you can. I feel like all of the abilities the Portal now has and how well it works, and doesn't seem to struggle at all for me personally, and didn't struggle when I played this game, which is the game I thought I'm going to play the remastered version of Spider-Man and see how it gets on.
Yeah.
And not once did it blink, and it is sensational as a piece of kit. Like, as in, and
nice.
To see the evolution of PSP to Vita to Portal, and it's almost like, and then I started thinking about, and I'll get into the conversation much more detail at some other point when we've got a bit more time, but almost thinking about, God, the Vita got absolutely shit on by Sony, and it's almost like what we're actually doing is playing like we're playing the Wii U effectively, but by using the PS Portal, and I'm just like, if they just held the Vita, the Vita just got crushed between the smartphone rise and Sony's inability to sort of know what to do with it, and it's just like. It made me feel a bit happier about having the name of the podcast being the Vita, and almost the times we've sort of said how much the parts that we love, the parts that we hate and stuff. And I was a bit like, God, the Vita had such a hard run of it. Like,
it did. It really did.
And now people have got the PS Portals and these magical, wonderful things that they play at home, sat on their couches and stuff. And I'm just like, and get your remote play out of it. And I'm like, This is like, this is AAA gaming right here, playing this game on this piece of kit with the haptic feedback, how beautiful it looks in 1080p, that is in, wow, really breathtaking. The G Cloud was and is great, and I would recommend if you can get one of those at a good price, and you do play Xbox and PlayStation, or even, even if you've got Steam or Nvidia, all those things, it's a great multi-use tool, and if you're happy to stream. But this for me, because I brought a PlayStation 5 in and I was playing a few more contemporary games and those PlayStation exclusives, I felt like I'd go for it and had to do it. I've played a few hours of Astrobot with it and stuff, and it really does everything what a dual sentence. Sorry, what sense is this now?
Yeah. what have we called the controllers this week?
I don't even know. The Sensey ones, the Spidey Sense controllers. It really does everything that the controller does now, and it's pretty cool. It is pretty cool, and I am really enjoying playing games on it. I'll see if it holds up, because it might be at some point it comes across something, maybe, I don't know, Gran Turismo 7 or something, it just kind of craps out, I don't know, but certainly for this I thought this would be the test. So there we are, that's me announcing to you that I have a PS Portal now instead of a G Cloud, but not that you give a shit, but I thought
I'd forgot you had the G Cloud.
It is a bit weird, because I know if I'm like 3 years time, I'm like, I fucking love that G Cloud. It's just like, like Steam Deck, like something like that. So like I say, going back to this then, just the early sort of I guess talk about the development of it, and I've kind of jumped a little bit. So Insomniac, they've made the Spyro games, we touched on them recently, we've done Resistance games, Ratchet and Clank we've not really touched yet, but certainly they're a very well respected development company, and crucially they've done Sunset Overdrive, I think 2013, 2014 maybe. And you said a great word before. The locomotion system in that is something that they. So when Activision, the rights came up for Marvel, and Marvel took it back for Spider-Man, they kind of offered it out to everybody. They kind of said, Nintendo, Xbox, Sony, who wants Spider-Man? Sony were like, we'll take that. We'll take that. And then they took it to Insomniac, and sort of like, I think that the development team were more keen on it than the sort of the director of the business. And he was like, oh, I don't know. And they were like, no, we've got this great locomotion system. We need this. And then,
off you go.
Yeah, exactly. And now, it's the biggest selling sort of franchise, if you will, over the last 10 years. For Sony, so they're just like ching ching ching, and it's worked out really well for everybody apart from, say, Xbox and Nintendo. Something that's really shocking to me as well, then, based on all those numbers and the popularity, is that these are all on PlayStation Plus at the moment on the premium. That is, and so to get for me to be able to play Spider-Man 1, and again, this is another thing that I thought, well, it's good. This is why I will get the PS Portal, because Spider-Man 1, Miles Morales, and Spider-Man 2, like, to think that they are such important games now as Sony exclusives, and obviously you can kind of play them via PC a little bit now as well. But certainly, I guess Sony own the rights to it. Just to see them put that on that platform, I don't know what that says. I don't know if that's a really positive move and they're just swaggy as fuck, or it's almost like we need these to be on here to draw people in. So I don't know how many people are playing on PS Plus. It's a bit of a thought that's percolating in my head. I'm almost like, are they so far ahead in subscribers or people that use that kind of platform that they can afford to do that and not worry about it? Or do they feel like they need to put those types of games on there to draw more people in? I don't know any numbers behind that. I don't know any data or research or anything. It was just a thought.
Interesting thought.
So going on to the game then, there's not much more to say. It sounds ridiculous than what you would say. You are Spider-Man. It is an open world. Like it's in, 3D, 3D, obviously third person even. You have so much to do in this game, in so much that there is, there's so many tasks that is in, so which sounds horrendous, and kind of going on to the idea of it being an open world with loads of icons everywhere. This is the biggest load of icons I've ever seen on a map. Like, as in, and the number of different types of tasks that you have to do. There's I think there's about like 10 to 12 different types of sort of actions or missions that you can be doing along with the main story missions. But it somehow still managed to avoid sort of Ubisoft-itis. That is in, and I think that they've come up with a way to make it like such a living, breathing city that at all times, if you're swinging from the treetops / building tops as Spider-Man and you're quite alone, apart from some pigeons that are really fucking you off, like as in, if you take that into account and then you drop down to the city, like, and everything is just happening around you, and how the engine can work that quickly, the game engine, to understand that is what needs to happen.
Yeah,
it's amazing. It's almost like I imagine, like, in a TV set or something where something goes wrong and actually you end up backstage and everyone's like, oh shit, he's not Truman Show even, sorry. It's like Truman Show where he kind of sees like, oh, shouldn't have seen this yet. And it's almost like that never happens. Like, it just you drop in and everything's working perfectly. And that is like stunning to me. So yeah, it just feels really natural to be able to sort of, I guess, move between all these different types of missions. And I played this through in 15 hours and just kind of stuck as much as I possibly could to the main storyline. But regardless of that, you can't help but being drawn into all these little petty crimes or these bases that you've got, like these enemy bases you've got to take over and stuff. There are benefits of doing that. So you earn tokens, and these tokens will then, and XP, and they unlock suits, gadgets, and skills. So it's worth doing it. I still really try to be like, I just want to finish the game, want to get to the end of the story, just want to know what it's like, want to review it for the podcast. But still, like, there's so much fun to be had in those, and also just allowing yourself to kind of like get sidetracked a little bit. I'm not talking what I've heard about Crimson Desert, for example, where people go off on like massive odysseys for like days at a time. But they're also bite-sized as well. Like, you can find yourself just solving a crime within 3 or 4 minutes and getting the XP for that and getting a token for that, and it being worth your time. It really does sort of do that thing where there's no bloat. Like, as in, it really respects your time doing those things, and rewards you enough to be able to just do, right, my story mission's 3,000 meters that way. I'm going to do a couple of little side quests on the way. Like, you don't have to, but it's like, all right, I'm going to chase a pigeon. I'm going to crack open this enemy base, which take a little bit longer, granted, but, you know, and then stop this petty crime. I might do, I might pick up a backpack, and the backpacks are really cool because, like, for example, they fill in the backstory, because as you pick, sorry, go on you. All right,
I was going to say, all right.
Yeah. Yes. So which is good because so you enter this as a 23-year-old Peter Parker, which I feel like it's the perfect age to be picking up Spider-Man, because you don't get that origin story that everyone's seen 16,000 times, or they maybe try and put a different spin on it. But you do get the youth of still there to be able to make mistakes as well. So you get some really good story beats, relationships with the sort of chief of police, who's called Yuri, and then Dr. Octavius as well, who's like your mentor as Peter, and then you kind of start mentoring Miles Morales as well, sort of like, and you can just see he fits really well in that dynamic of sort of having all these relationships. The relationship that he has with Mary Jane as well, that's as different and not necessarily unique, but so not even super exciting either, but it's just interesting enough. It's just an interesting dynamic. She holds a lot of power, I'd say, in this relationship as well. Like, oh, not lording it or anything, but the sort of like, do you know what I mean? Like, as in, like, she's just within her own right, got a lot of character and a lot of good story beats, which you can't necessarily say for every single iteration of Spider-Man that you've seen before. Yeah. She sometimes serves a bit of a damsel in distress, whereas in this, very much so, has her own thing going on, and it's a bit like, I can't be done with your shit, Peter. Like, it's in sort of thing, and that's cool to see. You do have some mission variants.
Sorry,
good save. You do have some mission variants where you do play it as Mary Jane and as Miles, where these are stealth missions. They are, I think, generally by most people that have played the game, a bit maligned. I don't think they're as bad as, because I knew that going in.
Yeah,
I was like, oh, these are okay, actually. These aren't half as bad as I expected them to be, really. And they're few and far between. They're not like, they don't sink the narrative or the gameplay for long enough for it to be really, really horrible and noticeable. I get that you're not being Spider-Man, and at that point, those guys, they are just normal humans without powers and stuff, and they're just kind of sneaking around all these enemies. So you don't really kind of, you don't do much apart from just don't get caught. So it can feel like it slows the game down, but it certainly wasn't something that I was like, stopped it like a train wreck or anything. The combat then. So this is not necessarily like Arkham Asylum. Whereas you would say, would you say that as Batman you almost invite contact to parry to then react to things? Whereas I think in this one, you spend the dodge button is your friend almost. That is in being elusive and not being hit is almost. Am I misremembering? That's how I felt about it. Almost like you'd want to be able to.
Sometimes I was definitely playing Spider-Man 2 like I was playing Arkham and getting not frustrated by it, but like my MO when I'm playing the Arkham games is wade in and hit as many people as possible and then hit the dodge and parry button when I need to, rather than waiting.
Okay.
And what I was finding with Spider-Man 2 was, yes, the dodge button can interrupt most things, but crucially not all things, and not as quickly as I would have liked. Whereas in Arkham, it is basically king.
Yeah.
Like, it will interrupt anything.
Yeah.
I do see where you're coming from, but I think I would approach it slightly differently.
Okay. So this is probably a bit more rhythmic to me in my head.
Okay.
That you do to probably approach any battle, and there are many. That is in, and there is a lot of combat in here. I mean, if you think about what there is to do, there's almost like you get the combat. The traversal is stunning. That is in, like moving throughout the city and owning the city of Spider-Man and being able to go and do these different things. All this fun. That is brilliant. the combat's, I'd say, really, really good. There's nothing that ever really necessarily fails. There's a once you get further into the story and you've learned more skills and more ways of fighting, and you have way more gadgets which are controlled by a weapon wheel as you bring it up, and it kind of does that thing where there's cheaty stuff, and this is probably why Spider-Man's the ultimate sort of superhero that people like that you want to be, because he technically could probably do anything, because he's really sort of like, they don't describe his powers necessarily as all super strength and things, but it's like he can slow down time, which is like the Spidey sense thing. Yeah. And it's like, which is just what happens. Like during the battle, you can bring up your weapon wheel and it slows it down long enough to be able to pick another weapon, maybe, a web grenade or something, to be able to do that. And you can kind of go, well, actually, that's just written into his lore, and you don't bat an eyelid. Eyelid. That's my northerner coming out. And yeah, it's really, really good. It's just, you do get a lot at the end almost, where you're like, how many different buttons do I have to press here? How many different gadgets do I have? How many different abilities do I have? There's a lot to... Could you just play with the most Billy Bob minimum basics? I think they vary the enemy type to the point where actually it expects you to be able to use all these different gadgets and all these different points on the skill tree, which is... It's quite a basic, straightforward skill tree where it's like you do certain tasks and earn these certain tokens and unlock a certain type of skill. And I think there's 3 different types basically, and it just goes down a linear tree. And one of them's like how all your different abilities of traversal and all your different abilities of ranged combat and all your different abilities of melee combat basically.
Right.
And you can choose which ones you want to become stronger at. In the end, you earn enough tokens just to become maxed out on all of them pretty much. And when you do, you've technically in the background learned all these skills, and it's like hold R1 and press a square, or double tap square, for example, this effect. I just don't feel like you need it all. Like, is it needed? It almost gives you too much to put on your plate for combat, and I just think that there could have been slimmed down the number of options it gave you. It's like when Spider-Man gets the suit from Iron Man, and it's got like the instant kill mode and things like that. It's like, and it's like no. It's just like, I think it over eggs the pudding on some of these things. And I'd certainly say that as well about the types of tasks and stuff. So whilst I didn't feel like it was like suffering from too many there is a lot of icons and a lot of different types of tasks. It doesn't suffer, but you definitely could have just lost a few of them. There's like some research challenges, for example, which is kind of like meant to tie you into the main story about his best friend Harry, and it kind of does, but not really. Kind of, it's almost like it's alluding to things, and you didn't need them really, and it's just another way to earn a different type of token to unlock a different thing. There's challenge tasks that come in a little bit later on as well, where Taskmaster is kind of in it, but he's just sort of in your ear, kind of going, "Oh, you've got to do this challenge," and it depends on. They felt tagged on. Do you know what I mean? The ones that are natural. The ones that you kind of run into in the street, the ones that you would think Spider-Man would just run into on his way to things, on his way to work, just swinging by with a cup of tea. They feel great. The ones that are just all of a sudden, it's like, this is Taskmaster here, and you've got to do these challenges, and they're races and stuff, and you're like, back to that PS2 version, and you just kind of think, didn't need that. Do you know what I mean? And I don't think that makes for a good video game, adding in so many.
It almost sounds like if the PS2 Spider-Man 2 game was what Rocksteady played before making the Arkham games, it almost feels like the Arkham games were what were played before they made this.
Yeah.
And we've kind of gone weirdly full circle.
Yeah. This is why I was really interested when I was listening to you, because I was a bit like, it's really funny, like, as in, like, because that's what I was trying to draw back to the question of what is the main draw of playing a Spider-Man game? and actually, how much more do you need than the main mechanic of just being Spider-Man swinging through the streets? Because that's what's amazing my 8-year-old. Do you know what I mean? Like, as in, and I was like, all he wants to do is just run through the streets and stop some crime every so often.
It almost feels like my perfect Spider-Man game would be somewhere between the two that we've played.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sitting here thinking that yours does sound great, but it almost sounds like too much for me nowadays. Like, there would have been a time that I would have been all over it and I would have lived in that game. But it just sounds like there's too much for me now.
And this is why I do want to give it its flowers, because that I feel the same way as you do about these games usually. For whatever reason, it didn't feel like this with this game too
Okay.
much. Like, as in, and I think that whilst the almost like as you're making I guess a crossing across the sea, and you do a parting of the waves almost. You can make a beeline for the story missions on this, and avoid like is in quite a lot of those icons. That is in. So when I finished up, I hadn't really done any challenge tasks. I hadn't really done any research tasks. I'd cracked a few enemy bases, and I'd been doing sort of random regular crimes down the streets and stuff as I've been going. Like, I chose to pick up a lot of the backpacks because it's literally just you going to a homing beacon, and then it just gives you a little voiceover from Peter. Again, the voice works excellent as well, and just about a little bit about his past. And it's almost like the idea is that he's sort of webbed these backpacks across the city, like he's in with some things in there to, I don't remind himself who he is. I don't know, it's a bit weird, really, but then at the same time, it works. And just picking up the small ones that add to the story or add to the actual game, and not picking the ones that were a bit lengthier or felt just really kind of crowbarred in there, really kept it going for me.
Okay.
And I think that might be what it is. That is in, maybe if you wanted to, I don't know, platinum this game, I would think that you would at some point go, right, okay, I'm just doing the same thing as I was doing with Spider-Man 2, doing a to-do list, just literally doing Peter's shopping list, basically. That isn't. So I think that they let you play it either way.
Okay.
I don't know. At this point, if you listen to this podcast and you are one of those gamers who is here to platinum every single game and things, you probably detected that we're not necessarily those kind of people, I don't think, all the time, or at least not anymore in our video gaming lives. So, it's not a derogatory sort of thing. I wouldn't think to say that, if you are like that and that's what you like doing, that's brilliant. I just don't think that necessarily like we do that very often. You're looking like you might do that still, maybe. I don't know.
I'm reasonably sure the only one I've got a platinum in was like the Bullseye game. So,
the worst review game.
Even then, that was an accident.
Yeah, I know.
So
I threw too many darts.
Yeah.
I think that the traverse. So thinking about going back to those core mechanics then, and what makes this game tick as well as it does then. So the traversal, it just, like I say, it does its best Assassin's Creed impression of light a beacon. This opens up the rest part of this map. Like, I would say that not necessarily seamless. You do occasionally knock into buildings and walls like yourself, in terms of land a bit flat sometimes, but most of the time it finds a way to put a web in the right place, or for you to be able to fire yourself forward. Again, though, there's a lot of different ways that you can just do a basic, right trigger swing and feel through the haptic feedback the tension on the web, which is brilliant.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, but like sometimes you can do little like rolls and barrel rolls and things to earn XP as you go through the air and stuff. It's just so fucking cool. But then at the same time, like, you can find yourself, there is 3 or 4 different ways where you can kind of attach yourself to a building or pull yourself forward and stuff, which is great, but it doesn't always detect what you're about to do next because you're a human and it's a video game. Like, so, sometimes you might bang into a water tower and stuff that it's just like, oh, we didn't think that you were going to do that. Like, but it's not, it's not horrendous, really. Very rarely does that happen. Yeah, and like I said, the combat and stuff, like, is, mostly, I'm a bit of a button basher, admittedly so, certainly when it comes to any fighting games. Whereas this, I was finding my way around the buttons a bit easier and stuff, and, you have a couple of go-to moves because you know what's going to work, and the different enemy types necessitate that as well. You can only do certain types of, I guess, ways that you can knock people down. But there were different ways that you could get yourself in and out of battle as well. It was like, because it wasn't just locking you into that battle. Like, as in, if you were really struggling, there's like ways of focusing, which would make it, almost like give you finishes, for example. There's ways of healing yourself as well, which once you've built up your focus, so if you were struggling, you can heal yourself with you. That's another suit power. And then you can actually just kind of move away from the fight if you're really struggling. That isn't Spider-Man, just literally web yourself up and stuff. And I'd say it does a good enough job as well that there's enough peril that the game seems to detect that you're going to do that, and so they just start shooting at you, and they're like, "Well, no, okay, you're a bit cheaty to kind of move away." So I can understand that you're moving away to give yourself a little bit of time, but we're going to fire rockets at your head, do you know, kind of thing. So it does it for all of the things going on and all the inputs you're putting into it. The way the game reacts to you is excellent, really. Overall, that isn't, and I don't think there's many games that I can think of with so much going on and so much human input and it knowing exactly what's going to happen next. Funny that you mentioned sleeping dogs before as well. Some of my favourite scenes in this are some of the petty crimes that are going on, usually in like a bank or a shop. And actually, it changes the camera angle, so it goes to that sort of sleeping dogs camera angle, like is in where you go into a shop, and like so, it changes it that you're kind of fighting inwards into the shop, and it only shows one room, so it is quite limited. But it's just seeing Spider-Man just webbing up the whole place and smashing people and like swinging people around with a web and smashing a bad guy into another bad guy and stuff, like as in at this certain type of camera angle where you're just looking into this shop, and it's brilliant because it just shows all the chaos of what Spider-Man would do and bring. It's like, oh no, save me, Spider-Man. What the fuck are you doing? Like, it ruined everything. Like, you know, like they were only taking like £10 out of the till, and you've just like smashed the fucking place up. But it does a good job of showing those in certain areas as well. The stopping of cars, for example, in a car chase and stuff. Like, you know, like that's really crunchy and tactile and. There's a lot of fun to be had, just as you said, bobbing about being Spider-Man. In terms of the story, it's pretty good. It doesn't gel together very well at all. Like, as in, so there's a part in the middle of the game where you have this really big, probably the big set piece of the game. Disappointingly, it becomes a QTE. So and it did. I don't think it needed to be, and I think it probably would have. It's still. It's really. It's clearly it wanted to be a cutscene because it's so set piecey, and it's brilliant. And some of it is cutscene, but the bits that aren't just become this really slow, sluggish QTE thing. You're like, oh god, I wish I was just able to have more control of this situation because A, I think the game engine could probably handle it from what's shown me before, and B, it'd be a really good test at this point, almost like a skill test to see if I can do it. Can I actually be Spider-Man? And it also presents this really, I want to say good tonal shift. It kind of goes from being quite exciting Spider-Man sort of, you know, boys on adventure stuff to being like, oh, here's the responsibility and great power part of it. And actually everything's gone to shit quite quickly. But then there's like almost like a bit of a bolted on third act where everything happens, like as in the villains that you didn't expect to be involved all of a sudden are just involved, and yeah, it felt like pacing wise like they really kind of just got it wrong towards the end of the game. I've not seen anybody else necessarily be critical about that, but certainly for me during my playthrough, I think about 10 hours in, and it's almost like, oh, and then they kind of go, oh, here's the game, and you're like, you know, and you've just been training for this, and I was like, no, I was enjoying what I was doing, and now you've kind of changed, you've just changed the game on me, the goalposts have changed, and I don't know, like, is in it, even so much so that the tone of the game changed, and it almost felt like combat was easier, like, as in it was almost like they'd made it so that you'd like leveled up like through this XP being kind of like picking up to the point where it was just like, oh, it clicks on and you're like, right, okay, now you're really fucking Spider-Man. Do you know what I mean? You're ultimate Spider-Man right now. And I didn't like it. I didn't like that part of it. It just felt like, I don't know. I felt like they could have done a better job of just phasing that in earlier and making it feel more natural rather than kind of just going, and again, I'm trying not to be too spoilery, but as you imagine, and this is why I was asking about what it was like again in Spider-Man 2, because I couldn't remember, but I remember it obviously being Doc Ock, and then there being a few more villains than expected. And this is almost the same, but at the end, it's you know, and you kind of and it had more villains than I expected it there to be, because I didn't know anything about it without spoilers, and in the end, it didn't sit well for me. It didn't, like, again, didn't derail the game so much that I was like, oh god, this is awful or anything, but it just took that little bit off. And then I was trying to think about other PS4 games that about the same length, that story driven action adventure that I've played recently that I really enjoyed. And I thought about Uncharted 4.
Oh yeah.
And I thought about how they're different games, obviously, but those are the sort of DNA that they share, the boys' own adventure and things. And it just made me respect and feel more about, like, I was like, I can see where that was the end of Naughty Dog's journey with Uncharted, and you can see that. That is, and you can almost see how they know what story beats to hit at certain times, and all the different types of mechanics and stuff, and bringing everything together from the earlier games to kind of go, right, okay, we've learnt it now, we've honed our craft. And you can see how this is Insomniac's first Spider-Man game, and almost they just haven't quite got there with it yet. And it's not that it's not really good, it's just not a classic or great. That is in right at the top end for me. Again, other people might see it differently, but I was almost just, I brought myself back to that thought of, this is really, really, really good. It's not Uncharted 4, like, kind of like good. And yeah, it just, like I say, it is living out the Spider-Man fantasy, this game, which, and if it stuck to that a bit more often, like, is in almost in a way, or and I guess that the difference between your game and my game is that you can try and make it stick to that more often, whereas I don't think you can necessarily in Spider-Man 2. That isn't, obviously you get stuck in some of the game mechanics that kind of go, that you spoke about, where it's like an obstacle course and things. You can kind of avoid the things you don't want to do in this. Base attacks are a bit meh. You only have to do 2 or 3 of them, really, but you could do up to, I think, 15 of them, but they're a bit like grindy, if you will, like just lots of enemies coming at you and stuff.
Yeah.
The little things in this, like there's I think this was part of the remastered sort of, it was actually DLC in the original game, but there's like little bits where you can do, you end up chasing Black Cat as an enemy, but she kind of comes into it and you have to take photos, like, as in through a camera, and find like little black cats, like, like you get little frogs in Metal Gear Solid that you shoot and stuff. In this, you just get a little black cat, and you kind of got, and it just, again, the controller will just start to kind of have that haptic feedback when you almost finding it when you're looking across the skyline, but it just makes you focus on how beautiful New York looks as well and stuff. And those little things, and the chasing the pigeon, little sort of mini games, if you will, and stuff, but they're little mini missions, and they're fun because, again, you're just being Spider-Man mucking about chasing a bird, and it's just like, and everyone, all the cast, like I say, are really affable and really good. I do think the relationship between Spider-Man and Yuri, the chief of police, is really good. It's all quite kind of like young motherly, like, isn't over him and stuff. And, it's fun. It's really fun. It just wasn't quite top echelon.
Yeah.
So I was kind of between an 8 and a 9. I think I'm going to go for an 8. I think I'm going to be harsh on it because I do think there's room to improve and grow in this. I've not played Spider-Man 2 yet. I've heard things like it's not as good as this one for a lot of people, but in terms of the story and things, which kind of makes me feel a bit worried. But that from a honing of the craft of being Spider-Man, it's even better. So, but again, because it's on PS Plus, there's no way I probably won't play it as,
at least have a dabble.
Yeah, exactly, and just sort of find out a bit more. So, but. Very much a high-end recommendation to go away and play this game. And I'd be shocked to think that there's maybe a better Spider-Man game out there, but potentially there is. I don't know because I've not played them all. But my Spidey senses were certainly tingling with this one.
Oh, good.
You got any more points after I've spoken on that for a while? Is there anything?
Not really. I need to go and find out what that noise was downstairs while you were talking. I think the cat's brought something in.
But Spider-Man, she just like pulled Peter Parker in through like cat flap because he couldn't quite make it from my house to your house. Like, it just like got run over, and now Sunset the cat has dragged him in. Brilliant. Okay, right. Well, I'll let you go sort that out.
Thank you.
We'll speak to you guys real soon.
Catch you later.